Florian, we'd love to, we're very excited that you're here, and we'd love to ask you to basically give us a little introduction in this whole thing. How do we stay competitive in enterprise IT, and that we can share a little bit of all your clients and all the experience with that. So the floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you, Vincent. And so actually, we based this presentation on an article that I wrote with my good friend Barry Dippovan a few years back, like last year. And the idea was, how can we really use the modernization, which is around the corner of the enterprise IT, to really gain a competitive advantage in the new digital world? So if I just introduce myself, maybe to start with, I am a Bain partner. I am French, as you can hear. I've been working at Bain for the past 12 years now. And I used to be doing more enterprise technology, and I think my world became much more sexy now that I'm doing digital transformation. But it's actually the same thing, right? We are doing both digital and technology, and to really help the companies to gain a competitive advantage versus their competition. So the reason why the companies come to see us is I think by now it's really clear for everyone that the digital leadership is really mandatory if you want to have an advantage. It's going to improve your cost competition, it's going to improve your top line, it's going to improve your customer experience, and there is no way that you can not completely embrace it and really push it as much as you can. But I think your survey that you just launched a few minutes ago, actually, Vincent, was very interesting, because we came with very similar conclusion when we launched our own survey, which is when we look at what are the barriers to change. Actually, the first one was around willingness to make change, and that actually COVID was even more of a game changer. That has actually been completely slammed if we look at the past 6 to 9 months. But the second biggest barrier to change is really about this legacy, and that the word that also came the biggest and the strongest in this world cloud that we were just seeing before. And we have this legacy slow moving architecture, and that is what most of the traditional companies are really faced with, right? It's not everyone has a chance to be an Amazon or more like neobank like N26, and start from scratch. Most of them have been doing business for a long time, have been established for years and tens of years, and they have legacy system, and moving them is actually not that easy. Most of the large companies, especially in the manufacturing / consumer goods / everyone where there is a longer value chain, have been actually embracing more of the traditional ERP world, I would say, having very and wall-to-wall ERPs, and that is very complicated now to really embrace this technology and stay agile. Why is now a good moment to think about is the two largest ERP manufacturers are actually announcing the end of standard support for their traditional ERP version, and that is really because they are trying to also embrace the new technology. SAP, Oracle, they are both moving to the cloud, both offering new functionalities and new system in the cloud. But that means that the clients and our clients are now faced with kind of this wall. Is it going to be 2025, 2027? We don't know exactly when is going to be the date, but they know that they are going to need and embrace the new cloud version of the ERP. And our recommendation and what we have seen with clients is it's actually now a good moment to really pause and think about, where do you want your enterprise to go going forward? What do you want your technology footprint want to be? And what is going to be your architecture of the future for your company? And how are you going to use actually this change of your ERP, not only to just do a very, I would say, traditional technical upgrade, but really to rethink the way that you do business. So in our views, and that's really what Bain has been developing over the past years, in our view, the future of the architecture and the modern architecture are still going to rely on ERP, right? I think that is very, very important to remember and to realize that the ERP is not going to realize. However, what is likely is the ERP is likely going to shrink more to really going to be what are the core function, what are really your limited set of processes where you need to have a traditional ERP, because frankly, there is no real way to reinvent the wheel, like to really put transaction in your system or to do accounting. Like the large ERP provider have that completely under control. They know how to do that, and let's use their processes. This part, you can also use that to link with some, or more of your legacy system. If you have some very traditional or legacy MRP, or like, some in your plants or manufacturing, and you don't really want to disconnect them just because, over time they do the job. You don't really need to change the way you are producing maybe. And these ERPs and these future ERPs will be able to be kind of a layer that's still going to use the data of your more legacy system, but be the interface with the rest of the world. Then on top of your ERP, and that's where it becomes to be very interesting, is like that's where each company is going to really need to think and decide about where do you want to be differentiated, where do you want to have your competitive advantage. And that is going to bring a lot of questions. Do you want for a specific domain, if you want to use, I don't know, IoT, like some large companies in the US selling footwears, they are able now to put like small RFID device on each of their apparel, and that helped them for each of their store to have an end of the day real-time inventory. So that's completely fantastic. But for that, you need to create the modular solution, what we call. So to have really, where are you going to be differentiated? Why do you want to adopt some kind of the industry best of breeds software as a service? Why do you want to think about potentially building some of your own domains, because you want to be so differentiated that you think only you can do that, and you might want to have very, very specific pieces of your software that you are either going to develop in-house, or you are going to buy from very specialized provider. The other thing which I think we should not mention are three things on this one. The first thing is like you will see the infrastructure. It's obviously a good time to completely embrace the cloud. I think the other thing we saw earlier in your survey was moving to the cloud. And yes, obviously we need to also use this new transformation, this jump into this modern architecture in order to really embrace the cloud and make sure we start moving as many of the applications as we can. The other one is the end-to-end cybersecurity, which is becoming more and more important, because you are more and more transferring some data from your more legacy kind of application, as we saw, that you still need, and to some application in the cloud, and potentially some applications are going to be in different clouds. So all of that is getting more and more integrated, and really thinking about how do you maintain your security of that, and how do you keep your data safe is important. And the last one on the left-hand side is around how do you really leverage your data, right? The word is like, it's creating, I think, more data like every year that we have had created for the full of our history. How are we going to use the data and avoid that our data lake become really data swamp, and we don't know where to use that? And so we really need to think about how do we use this data, how do we organize them, how do we construct the architecture of the system, not only from a system perspective, but also from a data perspective. And we'll see that's one of the things where our clients struggle and really have some difficulties. If we think about what are the changes which are required, and I think we touched on a couple of them, but just wanted to recap them, and where we see the most successful ERP transformation with our client. The first one is like, it's really an opportunity for you to simplify and standardize your processes and reduce your business complexity. We were discussing with a client like no later than last week, telling me, we just put in place new system, and now we are trying to simplify our system. Gosh, wouldn't have been better if we would have simplified our system first and then really put in place the new system using everything that we see with the cloud with that plain vanilla and like standard functionalities, because that will help you to not think about your system anymore. You will get the upgrade naturally, you will get the updates, everything will be easier, and you can really focus on your business. Then you need to think about the operating model, right? A lot of the operating model, and it's a bit of a complicated point, so I won't debate too much today, but really think about who is going to own which responsibility in the company, and try to adapt your operating model to the new way of working and the new processes that you have put in place. The third thing is like making sure you streamline as much as you can all the decision making. If you want to be nimble, if your system want to be agile, if you want to be faster in the way you do business, then it cannot be your organization that is going to drive you away and be slower because of the way you make decisions. So that's also an important point to address. The first one is, how do you prioritize? There will be a lot of demand. Every single person in the business will want their own small, either customization or small piece of functionality that they want to do. You cannot do everything and anything at the same prices. And if you try to do everything, that's the best way to fail. So let's, try to adopt more the agile approach. Have your backlog very clear. Make sure you prioritize. Make sure which item is for development in your next sprint. Develop that. Give it to the business. Otherwise, you just have IT going into this tunnel, developing something, and then when they go out after a couple of years, the business has moved on already and doesn't want anymore. And the fifth one, I mentioned it, but data, right? This is again and again, every time we transform any company, that the one issue we see is with data, with several sources of truth, dirty data which is not incorrect, which is not complete, or which is not consistent across systems. So when you embark on this big transformation, there are two really areas that we require, like we think are important for you to be successful. The important is like to have a good setup, so avoid a poor setup, which is having a strong business buy-in. You are not going to transform your ERP, as we said earlier, by just having it IT driven. It has to be business led, right? You have to, the best program manager, even for ERP, even for very technical topics, are still business people who are ready to understand a little bit of IT, but who are respected by their business peers. You need to have a strong leadership, ideally the C-suite, otherwise you are never going to get the buy-in and the change management. And then you need to have the right technology. So again, don't let all the software vendors like to really push you into a corner. That's a unique opportunity to rethink about your technology landscape. And then you need to have the right delivery, which is keep the planning, staying agile as much as you can, having an execution which is like avoiding your customization, just like being focused, as we said earlier, on your small priorities, going one after the other, and having a strong governance, which is going to help you to fall into the red middle, which is the Chubb ERP project, which unfortunately we see too many of them with our clients. And maybe to finish, like, what are the questions you need to think about when you want to really embrace and start your enterprise IT modernization journey? The first one we mentioned is like, what do you want to build versus what do you want to buy, right? And I think that's a very fundamental question. In some areas, it really makes sense to go with the industry solution and just buy it, just because some software provider have developed it for years and years, and they have something which is perfectly catered to your needs. For some other areas where you want to be more modular, like why not embracing some more microservices and have really like modern technology, and so you can keep control of that. The other one is, do you want to be early adopter or fast followers? Some clients, fall into the trap of trying to be early adopter and co-create with very large software provider, but actually it doesn't always work, and some of them are really then struggling to embrace the software. However, if you are a very large client, it might make sense, and it might actually help you to shape the template or to shape a specific solution to your needs. Would you like to upgrade only some of your ERPs, or try to do that to rationalize your ERP footprint? And we truly believe that the one ERP is not the solution to all your problems. In some cases, it will be better. In some cases, there might be a need for you to keep a couple of more ERP separated either because you have different business model, or you are thinking about divestment, or you are having really business with different ways of working. Then you have the ever question around brownfield versus greenfield. There is always a temptation to say, let's go with greenfield, it's going to be nicer. But we have also seen it can be very, very expensive, and not all of this transformation succeeds. Some of them just trying to be greenfield at the end never really get off ground. And the last one, which I think is becoming less and less relevant, is around on-premise versus cloud. I think now most of the cloud providers are really offering like strong security, strong functionalities, and most of our clients are actually choosing more the cloud solution. What is true, however, is some of your application, especially some of your very traditional legacy application, are going to remain on-premise. And it can be sometimes very expensive if you just lift and shift them to the cloud, then you are not going to reap the benefit of the cloud. So it can be very expensive to really rewrite them to make them cloud compatible. In which case, it might make sense to keep some of this application on-premise. So I think that was a little bit of a short summary about what we believe is your journey to move to the future of the enterprise modernization. Vincent, was it too fast, or was it good enough?
No, I think we did it well. I mean, it was no problem, and it sounds so simple. You just need to simplify your business. You need to have brilliant business managers. You need to basically move from on-premise to the cloud. I mean, it seems like a very simple process. I mean, it seems actually completely impossible. How do you find the people? How do you deal with the complexity? How can you change the business first, simplify it? I mean, it sounds like you have to play chess on 64 different fields. I mean, can this be done by normal human beings?
Well, no, it can be done, and luckily we have some great people doing that in all of the companies, and I'm sure some of people who are 20 plus years in IT have seen that. But what is true is that you cannot rely on only one person or one CIO. I think the combination of having the right partnership between some strong IT people, some strong business people, and having the right team is obviously, as you said, the most important. Is you cannot really push that with only one person who believes in the future of the technology.
But even having, I mean, the more people you have, the more complex everything becomes, and the more people you put on the project, the slower it will take. So it seems like impossible. So I think it's really like having a knot, and all that old stuff, all this old beautiful legacy which has served us well, where we invested all the money in. It's so hard to give it up. It's so hard to have all these investments, all this pain we put into these systems which work, to basically give it up and start to the next thing. Well, that's the theme of today, how we're going to do that. So let's get some questions from the audience in there. Let's see, can you give us some budget trends at the moment? How's that going?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. The budgets have actually been increasing massively, and a few years back you were seeing budgets in like the tens of millions of dollars for the transformations. Now it's not rare that we see hundreds of millions of dollars, and I have even seen a couple of end-to-end transformation where budget are north of $1 billion. So it's increasing, just because, as you are saying, you need to unplug so many years of legacy, and you need to have so many domains covered that it costs a lot of money.
Okay, so it's a lot of money, but normally if you talk about IT budgets, right? I mean, it's like between 4% of sales to 10%, and maybe if you're Google, maybe it's 20% or something like that. But a big transformation project, I mean, can you put it as a percentage of the total IT project per year?
So when you start this type of transformation, it's very hard to give you really a percentage. I don't want to be the typical consultant who say it depends, but it actually depends a little bit in this case. But what you can see is when you embark on your ERP transformation, ERP replatforming, you name it as you want, you're actually speaking about your overall budget of your transformation is going to be in excess of your overall IT budget for a couple of years. Just the part dedicated to the transformation is going to take all your IT budget. And remember that in parallel you need to keep your lights on, right? You cannot tell the business we are going to go on this transformation for a couple of years, and for that time you will need to go back to my old good book behind me and papers and pen. So you need to keep your lights on during that time.
Yeah, well, I really enjoy, I mean, the vision and the promise of Vandenberg, who says, keep your old stuff nicely running, don't extend it don't develop it anymore, but extend it on the side and keep it in place. And then you don't need to spend so much money keeping it up and running because you don't need to update it, but you can just enhance functionality on the side instead of one huge transformation. I remember going from SAP 2 to SAP 3, and then basically going to the cloud. And then every couple of years, we have a huge transformation. And I like it that we go to more smaller steps instead of these big, huge updates to do it differently. Is there hope at the end of the tunnel with this approach?
Yeah, but I think that's what we see a lot, right? About strangling your more legacy system and making sure you park them. And the one thing that you always need to bear in mind, I think I'm repeating myself and getting old, but like make sure that your data and your source of data is in one place when you do that, because otherwise the communication between your legacy, which you have nicely isolated, and your more modern front end or specific modular software is going to create a duplication of data, and that's where the nightmares start for the front line and the users of the system.
Okay, we'll talk about more that data. Make sure that you're in charge of your data. You can move it everywhere. Okay, another question. If you talk about Cloudnative ERP, is that are all the ERP systems which move to the cloud? Are they? Can you compare them with the Cloudnative ERPs?
Yeah, so there are a couple of, so we at Bain especially work with more larger and mature companies. So we tend to go with the largest ERP providers. Some of the ERP cloud native are starting to really perform, and we see them a little bit everywhere on the market. I think what's interesting is like the two largest ERP providers have really been rewriting, and I think it's fair to say that both Oracle Fusion and S/4HANA are actually also really more cloud native and are not just a rewrite of the old code. And it's a lot of investment for these two providers, but they have actually been investing a lot of that. And some modules are still more traditional, I would say, but some of them have been rewritten and can now be considered as cloud native.
Okay, now question here, the ROI. Is it a question of ROI or is it a question of surviving?
So, depends on the price of your life, I guess. But I think what we tend to say is we don't really like when IT says you have to invest hundreds of millions, otherwise we're going to die, because that's never true. And you really just need to put in perspective these things. And I think we didn't elaborate about how you really build the change management, but part of your change management and the way you're going to get the leadership support and your CXO support is based on this ROI. So I think it's a brilliant question. It's a lot of money and a lot of investment, but actually if you do it properly and you really rethink the way you do business, it creates a lot of value, both in terms of top line, like leveraging the power of data for selling more or selling in some areas where you could never have sold before because you were not reaching them, and also in terms of cost, because you can really simplify and automate your backend. It's something I could speak about for hours, but it's not the topic today, but it's a very, very important topic.
I think your first thing, if you simplify your business, that is the best investment you can do. Always with energy, save energy first, and then basically go sustainable. If you go with enterprise IT, simplify all your business processes first, and then basically transition yourself. It really is big. Okay, we have lots and lots of questions. Here's more. We have time for two more, so I'm sorry about that. But let's see. Enterprise architecture. If you see that all these architectural components involving cloud, if they move in the cloud, how's your architecture has to change?
So there are two. I think there are two questions here. There is the enterprise architecture team and the enterprise architecture itself. I think the enterprise architecture team needs to I think more and more understand both ways of the equation, right? And that they are going to be a bit of the guardian of your future of the architecture. And then, as I was saying earlier, you need to think about your connections. There will be more and more connection between what are your traditional, and even Vincent, when you were saying we're going to keep some of the legacy and strengthen them, so this is going to stay on premise. And then you need to think about, again, it's always the same, what are going to be your interface, how are you going to build them, and how are your data going to properly interface between your more traditional system on premise, or frankly, the application you want to keep on premise, and the one you want to move on the cloud.
Florian, we have a lot more questions here. I want to ask one more, but we could talk for hours with you. But here's Tony, and he's saying, this is a question I have no idea about. How is the ERP solution implementing, adapting to DevSecOps paradigm?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tony. We should take it as well offline. So it's an interesting one. I think what we see is especially in terms of planning, initial planning, the ERP transformation usually have a bit more of that. You cannot just really move into completely agile from the beginning, because as we say, you need to start by thinking about how is going to your business going to change and simplify. But then when you are more in the implementation phase, then you can really try to move more towards DevOps or DevSecOps and having more cross-functional team. And actually, that's very much similar to what I was saying earlier. You need to find the right combination of business and IT if you want to have this system successful, especially if you move to software as a service. Actually, a lot of the world is going to be less into the IT part of the world and more into the business, trying to really understand how can they take this out of the box systems and adapt them to their needs.
Okay, you need to take it offline with him, Tony. I have two more little questions, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. What is the best approach, Waterfall or Agile? What is the best success rate?
So that's what we just say. I think you need to obviously Agile DevOps was better and is more likely to create the value and to adapt to the needs. But at the beginning, you need to really think about how you are going to rethink your business, and that can feel a little bit waterfall because you are not actually delivering any functionalities in the very early part of your ERP transformation.
Okay, great answer. So I like it. That's a subtle answer. That's a 2x2 matrix. And as a business school man, I love that. Last question: if company moves to the cloud, risk management. What is your assessment on that? Is that nowadays? Is it just part of the solution and it's okay? Normally it's okay implemented, or is it still a very important thing?
No, it's very important, and work with professional on that. We don't want to give any advice on risk management because it's very complicated, and cybersecurity, I mentioned that is very, very, very part of the heart of when you move to the cloud. And there are a lot of specialist companies working on that, and I recommend that you work with them.
Okay, Florian, we would love to be there with you in the Dominican Republic. And we'd love to talk to you more because you're full of answers, but we really are very grateful that you're here joining us all around the world with this introduction. You gave us a very tough assignment to do, to get all these resources allocated, and you gave us a big task. We're going to chew on that on the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Vincent. Thank you.